This is Shofet Oliver coming to you on the 12th of May 2020, which is also the day of Lag BaOmer, the 18th day of Iyar. And yesterday I uploaded a video and I made a record for it getting deleted by YouTube within, I think, half an hour. I think the name on it may have given it away as violating the guideline against medical misinformation. That is very transgressive. Medical misinformation, which could lead to great harm if people get the wrong information on medical matters, and therefore my video had to get deleted within half an hour. So if they're deleting something using such propaganda, doublespeak, that you're on the right track. So I'll try to convey similar information today, and hopefully the video will stay up for a little bit longer and get more views. So we are living through a massive worldwide PSYOP, a psychological warfare operation of unprecedented scale. It is in one sense a hoax, and in another sense it is a false flag operation. What is the difference between these two terms? A hoax is an event that literally never happened, that is entirely bogus, that is purely staged by the media. It's Hollywood. It is only created by crisis actors and in studios and in the minds of the gullible viewers of the MSM, who actually believe that anything on the MSM can be presumed to be true. The opposite is the case. Everything on the MSM must be presumed to be false, or at best a half-truth, which is concealing crucial information, and it's a narrative being fed to us for a specific nefarious agenda. So that's what a hoax is, whereas a false flag operation is an event that is blamed on an enemy where people actually are harmed, like 9/11. 9/11 was a actual event where people died. They were crushed, or they fell to their deaths, or they were suffocated to death, or what have you. So people actually died. There was actually an attack in a sense, but it was not carried out by some mysterious terrorist organization by fanatic Muslims, but rather it was an inside job blamed on this outside entity. So that would be a false flag operation. So in some sense, you could say that COVID-19 is a hoax, in the sense that the people who are dying of natural causes or of other causes are being attributed, their death is being attributed to COVID-19. Likewise, people who were killed, well, if they were killed, then that is not a hoax. That's a false flag operation. That's people actually dying who would not otherwise have died. So that would be a kind of actual event. If someone was going to die anyway, and their death is merely attributed to COVID-19, that's a non-event. That's purely about the way it's reported. So that would be classified as a hoax. But if it's a person who would not otherwise have died and is now being killed in order to jack up the statistics, that would qualify as a false flag operation. So when we say that COVID-19 is a hoax, what we're saying is that the concept, the claim that it's a pandemic is a hoax. Pandemic meaning that there are huge numbers of people dying because of this alleged virus. That is a hoax. Meaning that is literally not true. That is purely a result of propaganda in the worldwide media, trying to give us the impression that there are vast numbers of people dying because of a uncontrolled and uncontrollable sort of force of nature. That is not a true event. There's no such event. There is no proof that COVID-19 has caused a huge number of people to die. Not in Italy, and not in New York, and not in China. When it comes to China, well, we can't rely on any information coming out of China, so even more, non-conspiracy minded people will accept that. So China can't prove anything. Italy, we have we have the report admitting that people who had COVID-19 but didn't die from COVID-19 were counted as having died from COVID-19. And also every single year those hospitals are overloaded. So therefore it's simply false to talk about the hospitals being overloaded. And every single year there's a high death count among the elderly. So the claim that there are overloaded hospitals with a high death count among the elderly is really deceptive, because it ignores the situation in the past. At first glance it seems convincing, but upon investigation it's not. And we know that also 5G was rolled out there in those areas of Italy where there was a high number of people affected by reportedly by COVID-19. In any case, there is no proof of that in Italy. It's aside from the fact, which must be constantly emphasized, that the tests are completely faulty, which means that every single last news report about a spread of COVID-19 is just completely unscientific. It's just disingenuous. If there's no test for it, then there's no way of describing a statistic on the matter, and therefore there's no way to claim that there's a pandemic. And then we have New York. Well, in New York we know now from the testimonies of the friends of the nurses, in particular Brianna Chanel and Sarah NP, nurse practitioner, who both testified that what their friends told them. And then we have the explosive, crucial, God willing, civilization saving testimony of Nicole Sirotek last week, which everyone must share, where she gave very convincing testimony. You're right, it's one person. One person could not be telling the truth. We wouldn't be accepting testimony of one person in a court of law normally. But it does fit with the other testimonies, and does fit with the general circumstances that we're seeing of a very high death rate specifically in New York and not in other places, which is very hard to explain logically. And also, as it's been pointed out, Tokyo has a very large, dense metropolis, and yet they do not have vast numbers of deaths like in New York. So therefore, there must be another explanation. And Nicole Sirotek says very clearly they're not being, they're not dying from COVID-19. Rather, they're being killed by the nurses and the doctors and the deliberately harmful protocols from the administrators. So, there is no proof that there is a pandemic. And therefore, everyone who continues with that narrative is everything they say is based on nothing. It's based on just a complete lie. The only way to come to any clarity in the details of what we should do is to first appreciate the truth that there never was a pandemic. There never was in the first place. That means there was never any justification for lockdowns, and that means that there certainly is no justification today, after all this information has come out, to claim that we have to do anything differently. This entire event is psychological warfare, meaning it's not real. It's not, it's all about playing with our minds and wearing us down, so we will submit to the deprivation of our rights and freedoms by the state. Now, when it comes to the media, the entire purpose of what we're being told is to promote a narrative. I will give some credit to Fox News. They have given much more honest reporting on these matters. You can be a bit cynical and say that it's because that's what gets them ratings, this more hard-hitting approach. Either way, they deserve credit. Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson, I don't know if they're writing their scripts, but whatever the case, they deserve credit. They're an exception to the rule. But otherwise, all the worldwide media is united in essentially functioning as a arm of the government, propaganda, psychological warfare, tool of the deep state. And anything we see on the media, we should be extremely suspicious of. We should not take at face value. We should think very critically about whether it's true, whether it's a half-truth. It could be purely crisis actors. It could be telling us only one side of the story. We cannot allow ourselves to be absorbing the messages from the media in any way. So, the most recent news is the issue of contact tracing, and this comes around the same time that we're being told by official sources that the vast majority of New Yorkers still walking into hospitals with COVID-19 were sheltering at home and avoiding mass transit. We were told on the 6th of May. Very few were even traveling on foot or in their own cars on a daily basis. According to a survey of new patients from over 100 hospitals across the state over a 3-day span, Of those surveyed, 66% were at home before entering the hospital. Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York, who presented the preliminary findings on Wednesday, said they underscore the need for people to double down on protecting themselves and their families with things like masks, hand washing, and staying away from the most vulnerable. So be even more paranoid and fearful than you were before, says Governor Cuomo. Instead of drawing the conclusion from this that there's no reason to take measures because they don't even help, so we may as well function normally because all the measures, the drastic measures we took to stay at home, not go outside, didn't help, and we still got it somehow, which requires a scientific explanation. My explanation is that the symptoms of COVID-19 come from 5G, and that's what's getting people to go to the hospital. Once they get to the hospital, then they're being slaughtered. In any case, what they're claiming is, what he's claiming is that this is a reason to be even more observant of strict measures. Another point, the main point I believe here behind this report, is that this is psyching us up and getting us used to the concept of contact tracing. So until now, they promoted the narrative of stay home, save lives. If you leave the house, you're endangering lives. Because if you leave the house, you could spread the disease and you could catch the disease. But if you stay home, then you're safe from the disease. That was a useful narrative when they were mandating the lockdowns. But now that the lockdown strategy or phase of this mind control operation is passing, so now we need a new narrative in order to incite fear. So now we're doing a 180 and saying that in the home you're in greater danger. Well, this is now being used as a justification for contact tracing, which involves pulling people out of their homes simply because some algorithm on an app said that the person in the home or the people in the home at some point came into contact with somebody who later tested positive for COVID-19, and therefore they have to be quarantined. And if that means, it supposedly won't always mean being pulled out of one's home, but it could well mean that if there's no separate bathroom. So the point here is to give these tyrants the excuse to implement the next phase of this grand mind control operation and rollout of the police state. Now, this is reported on Forbes, April 30. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said in a Thursday press conference that the state will hire thousands of contact tracers, people who notify others who have been exposed to COVID-19, as part of the system being developed to help the state return to everyday life, as coronavirus hospitalizations and deaths continue to decline. Between 6,400 and 17,000 tracers will be hired based on projected cases, Cuomo said. That's just in New York. This is being rolled out in every single state. So we're talking about, I don't know, over 100,000, what is that? 100,000, hundreds of thousands of people who will now get new employment of becoming the health Gestapo. The contract tracing system is being developed in partnership with former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who pledged $10 million to help fund the effort, and Johns Hopkins University. All these prestigious universities are involved in very shady technology. If it's prestigious, it's probably being used by the CIA. Cuomo said New York is creating the contact tracing playbook. Well, I like that term. That will be shared with New Jersey and Connecticut. In order to become a contact tracer, people will need to go through training and pass an online exam, Cuomo said. Contact tracing will be a 3-step process. After a person tests positive, they will be interviewed about contacts from the previous 14 days, and then those contacts will be isolated for 14 days, according to Cuomo. Right? So you could have come into contact with, I don't know, 100 people within the last 14 days. Then all those people will get a knock on their door, and their privacy will be invaded, and their freedom will be hampered, and perhaps they will even be removed from their houses at gunpoint and led to some other location. The point here is to terrorize the populace and to get people used to the idea that they have to submit to gun-toting communist persecution. And this is clearly, in my view, this is a precursor to further measures designed to deprive us of further freedoms. In particular, anyone who does not voluntarily go out and get the fast-tracked coronavirus vaccine will be hunted down by these same contact tracing thugs. New York City alone is hiring 1,000 contact tracers with a healthcare background. Healthcare. That is also commentary on the ethics of the people being trained for healthcare, which people so naively assume must be very fine people of the highest moral caliber if they're devoting their life to healing. No, we cannot assume that. There are also sociopaths and just weak people in the medical field, just like in any field, and perhaps even more so. So Bloomberg asks, how can we begin to loosen these restrictions and begin reopening the economy? One of the most important steps we have to take to reopen the economy as safely as possible is to create a system of contact tracing. When social distancing is relaxed, contact tracing is our best hope for isolating the virus when it appears and keeping it isolated. So, the earlier phase of this fear-based mind control was to incite fear through isolation. Everyone being isolated, everyone being separated from one another, being afraid to go outside. Now, if anything, the fear is even worse, because before, if you went outside, then you felt you were in danger. But now, you're always in danger of catching the disease, if, since you believe the narrative that there is a disease to be caught that is, deadly or could kill grandma. So now it's everywhere, because now you're going back to your normal life and you're interacting with other people. But at any point, any of those people could retroactively turn out to have been carrying COVID, which means that you, through no fault of your own, by simply not maintaining enough of a distance from the people around you, you could then be um, isolated and quarantined and have your freedoms and rights deprived from you, even though you were doing what you were supposed to be doing beforehand. If you left the house, you're walking down the street for no good reason, then um, they could have apprehended you, and also then you would have reason to fear that you might catch the disease. But now, no, you're being told a contradictory message. On the one hand, it's safe enough to go out and to return to work. On the other hand, at any point, you could get infected, and that would be terrible. And not only that, at any point you could come near someone else who would later on test positive, and therefore you will also be isolated without any proof that you have caught the disease, simply because of an app. So I believe that if anything, this regime, this strategy of mass mind control is even more toxic and even more fear-inducing than the previous strategy of the lockdowns. So if someone would voluntarily download this app, well, I can't think of anything more stupid, anything more irrational. Anyone who would want to invite the government to spy on them and track them knowingly is a fool, and I could almost say that he deserves to become subjected to this.
Don't believe the church and state and everything they tell you.
You have nothing to gain by downloading this app. You have everything to lose by participating in it. I should also point out that there is subtle propaganda over here, because the implication is that if you do download the app, then they're tracking you. But if you don't, then you're safe. They're not tracking you. This is not true. They are already tracking everything we do using our smartphones. You can be spied upon, and you are being spied upon to some degree. Certainly your movements are being tracked, and that's true even if your phone is off, so long as it's not completely out of battery, or if the battery is removed, then apparently your phone is not tracking you. But my understanding is even if the phone is off, it is still active and can still track you. Another solution to deactivating your phone would be to wrap it in aluminum foil. So in any case, here, if that's the case, then here it's the main goal is psychological, to get people to submit to the government to the point that they willingly ask the government to track them. That is a certain level of degradation where people self-enslave that the elites want to impose. So this measure is an even greater expansion of the police state that takes the mind control to a whole new level, and also the social distancing concept that before you were only afraid of coming near anyone else if because number one, you might catch the disease, but how likely is that? But also because you're violating this new social norm, and you don't want to feel. No one wants to feel like someone else will get upset at them for violating the norm, and they don't want to be seen to be being reckless, even if you believe that there's nothing to worry about, maybe he does believe there's something to worry about, so it would be sort of grossly impolite for me to violate the new norm of social distancing with someone else who I don't know to be like-minded. So there are those two issues with social distancing. Those two sort of motivations for social distancing until now. Now there's a whole new and more harsh motivation, which is that if you come too close to that guy, then you could be approached, and you could get a knock on your door from like a SWAT team demanding you come out and go to the hospital or submit to a test, or um, go to some hotel or go to some FEMA camp. Who knows how it will go down? But either way, you're not going to want to find out. So that will be an even more powerful motivation to comply with the social distancing regime. And this is all a part of breaking down the sort of morale, the character of the population through a divide and conquer strategy. United we stand, divided we fall. They want to divide us, destroy the social cohesion, the social fabric, through this evil concept of social distancing, and now by taking the social distancing to a whole new level with contact tracing technology. So it's really time for everybody to not be shy about spreading the truth about what is really going on. That there is no pandemic. The government is playing us. That we need to collectively declare we do not consent to any of these measures, and we don't fall for this narrative. It's been debunked. We're not going to play along with it. And especially anyone purporting to be a leader, lay leader or a rabbi or some other person with a leadership position, perhaps because of their position in the entertainment industry or what have you. Anyone with influence should be joining us in this call, should be demanding accurate information on statistics, not skewed statistics. They should be calling it out. Should be calling out the murder in the hospitals, the medical malpractice. They should be calling out the deception by the media. They should be telling the people, don't be afraid of the disease. If there's anything to be worried about, it's the government. We do not consent to these deprivations of our rights and freedoms. Hopefully, this will be a wake-up call to all those people. I'm not getting my hopes up, but we have to do our best to spread the truth. And when tyranny becomes law, resistance becomes a duty. So please like, share, subscribe to my channel, and thank you for listening, and God bless.